A vertical scan through the answer choices reveal that A, B, and C start with unsold goods, whereas D and E start with consumer spending. But the real split is in the usage of the verbs here. A says piled, B says were piling, C says had piled, D says was slowing, and E says has slowed. Now this split should reveal that the concept being tested for is tenses. And usually when tenses are tested, the trigger for which timeline we're talking about falls in the non-underlined portion. Mind you, it could even come in the underlined portion, but usually that's where the triggers are. And I'm telling you this because people generally don't pay attention to the non-underlined portion. So if you notice here, the sentence reads, while businesses were expanding. So this is in the past continuous tense. And this while is a preposition used to indicate simultaneous occurrence of events. So while businesses were doing this, what was happening to unsold goods? Should we use the simple past tense piled? So while businesses were expanding, unsold goods piled. Now this would not be appropriate because you want to indicate that when there was a past continuous action happening, there was another past continuous action happening simultaneously. So A goes off. Now B says unsold goods were piling as the spending slowed sharply. Now this is also using the past continuous, as is the construction in the non-underlined portion. So this can work because these are two past continuous actions happening simultaneously, so we can hold on to B. Now C says unsold goods had piled. Now this is the past perfect tense. The past perfect tense cannot be used here because this tense is generally used to talk about an action that is complete in the past relative to another later action. For example, we can say, I had eaten dinner by the time you called. So you see, we have a past perfect action here, and this is relative to a later action in the simple past itself, called. So we see that there is no relative point or relative later action in the simple past, so C cannot work here. Now, consumer spending was slowing. This is the past continuous tense, whereas E says consumer spending has slowed. Now, this is the present perfect tense. Now, again, this cannot work because we know that in the non-underlined portion, we have a simultaneous trigger and the usage of the past continuous. So E can be knocked off as well. Now, one commonality between D and E is the usage of this comma with construction. GMAT is pretty weird with these comma with constructions, and generally these kind of answer choices end up being wrong on official questions. But let me just discuss this so that we understand exactly why we can get rid of D in this case. Now, I want to give a big shout out to Mike McGarry from Magoosh because he submitted an excellent article of how to use this comma with properly. And I'm going to throw a link to his article in the description below. But let me try to explain this in the simplest way possible. So how exactly can we use this comma with construction? Now let me give you an example here. And we can say the dog ran and hid behind the couch, comma, with its tail tucked between its legs. Compare that to the example, he relaxed on the couch with his wife massaging his head. Now look at these two examples in terms of meaning. Which one do you think is more appropriate? So let's try to understand these better. See, the with construction would be appropriate in the first example because in the main clause, the subject is the dog. And this with construction, this with modifier, is just giving us more information about the dog itself, therefore acting as a descriptor. But what we can see in the second example is that here the he is the subject, whereas in this with construction, the performer of the action is a completely different entity, his wife. So actually in the place of with, we're supposed to have a conjunction because we want to split them as two separate clauses. So he relaxed on the couch, and this would be more appropriate if I said while his wife massaged his head. So this is how we can check whether the with construction is right or not. So if the with is actually tied to the main clause and presenting descriptor information, this would be appropriate in meaning. But if two different entities carrying out different actions are tied together with the with, that would not be appropriate. So if we take back this example into answer choice D and E, we can see that the with construction has with the piling of unsold goods or with unsold goods piling up. So you see, these particular constructions are not providing any descriptors for the nouns in the previous clause. Consumer spending is a completely different entity and the piling of consumer goods is a completely different entity, as is the goods in answer choice E. So D can be eliminated. So the right answer choice is B for Bravo.